did, as long as everything's fine. The one thing I asked for, as soon as that was over with, he denied that there was going to be an end to hostilities. He said to put out some bullshit story that Dennis had stabbed him in the back and gone back on the whole deal 2 or 3 days later, right? He never had a meeting with the boys. He never did anything he said he was going to do. He gave me everything else to make up for it. So once again, you basically can't believe what Paul Heyman says. I'll tell you another story. You know the famous time where Ric Flair fired him in WCW and he had the big cussing match with Flair and threw a garbage can at him? You've heard that story.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was there. Paul had nobody to manage, right? So Flair sent him out to do a promo where he was scouting the world, looking for talent, that type of thing that a manager would usually do whenever they didn't have anybody to manage. And I'm sitting behind the monitor, behind Flair's chair, I was actually standing there watching when Paul goes out, and he does another one of those promos that was way too inside and to impress the boys and appeal to the smart fans, of who there weren't very many in 1989. And Flair's sitting there, and he looks up at me, and he goes, "Who is this guy?" I said, "What?" He said, "Who is this guy that he thinks that he can just go out and say whatever he wants on our television show anytime he wants to say it? Well, who is this fucking... What has he done in this business that I'm aware of, or that I'm unaware of, that allows him to go out here and just fucking say whatever the fuck he wants?" Is basically what Flair's saying. I said, "All right." He said, "All right." So the promo is done. Rick gets up, walks out in the hallway. Now, in center stage, there's locker rooms and there's offices, and then there's a big hallway where you come from the arena around the corner, and then you go into one of your doors wherever you're staying. But in the hallway, there's a slanted roof apparatus. And so I went out there because actually I wanted to see it, and also I wanted to be a witness in case there was any physical violence I could testify in court. I wasn't going to stop anything. So I'm over in the corner. Paulie comes around the corner, and Flair says, "You're done." And Paul thinks he means he's done for the night. "Oh, I'll see you tomorrow." No. You're not finished. You're done. You're fucking fired. I'm sick of this. You got a big mouth. I don't know who the fuck you think you are, but you're fucking fired. And he turns around, and Flair walks back into the office and slams the door. Now, Paul don't see me standing there. So he gets that boo-boo lip that he gets, and it quivers for a minute. And then after about 10 seconds passes by where Flair's already out of the hallway and closed the door, then Paul goes, well, fuck you too, and picks up the big plastic garbage can and heaves it at the door that's been closed and stomped off, and he was fired until he got his lawyers to reverse it or whatever. Here's another one. So we're doing the original Midnight Angle, right? Now, Paul always used to talk about how when he'd go back to New York, he'd go to the China Club, because that was the big hot club then, right?
Yeah.
He comes in, and, of course, as soon as I come into TV, he's running over to me. I couldn't even put my bags down. He says, "Guess where I went this past weekend?" I said, "Where'd you go, Paul?" "The China Club." I said, "Great. Guess who I saw?" I said, "I have no earthly clue, Paul." "Jack Nicholson." I said, "Really?" I said, "Jack." Now, it helps that Paul does a great impersonation of Jack Nicholson. I said, "Jack Nicholson came into China Club." "Well, I can believe that." He said, "I was sitting there. I saw him come right in the door. Guess what he said to me?" I said, "Well, no, ho, wait a minute. Jack Nicholson came over to talk to you." He came right up to me. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Hey, kid, watch the tennis racket." Paul, now, I swear I swear on my mother's grave, these are the exact words, because I'll never forget this conversation. I said, "Paul, you mean to tell me you're trying to intimate to me that Jack Nicholson is a fan of our angle?" That's what he said. I swear on my father's grave, or swear on my father's life. Father wasn't dead yet. I said, "Paul, now the choice you're giving me now is that either Jack Nicholson is a fan of our angle or you wish your father dead." He would not admit that he was bullshitting me. Jack Nicholson was a fan of the angle between the Midnight Express, the original Midnight Express. I'll give you another one. When Bubba Ray Dudley was a promoter for the New York towns, for ECW, right? Because every time he owed guys money, he'd give them some element of responsibility to make them feel important.
Yeah.
And Bubba saw through that, but he was actually trying to be a good promoter. Well, of course, he's waiting for the check from Paulie that's usually supposed to come and never does for the rent or, whatever expenses incurred in running the town. And he calls Paul, and he says, "Paul, I ain't got the check yet." And Paulie says, "Well, I FedExed it. Well, give me the tracking number, Paul, and I'll track it down." Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, I got it right here. 642-75234. And Bubba said, Paul, that's one too many numbers. Oh, knock the last one off. Or there was the time where he figured out the scam of refunding the non-refundable WCW plane tickets. This is how he got fired another time from WCW because they actually caught him. What he would do is the WCW plane tickets for travel for the talent were bought with a WCW credit card, and that credit card appeared on the ticket, and you could only refund to that credit card. However, Paul wouldn't always take the trips back home that he was given. He would sometimes stay in Atlanta, who knows where, because falsifying the hotel receipts is another story, but we'll get into that another day. But anyway, so he figured out that if you upgraded to a more expensive flight, you could trade the non-refundable ticket in, plus pay the difference, and put it on your credit card. And then if you turn around and traded that ticket up to a more expensive fare, you could pay the difference and put it on your credit card, and before long, the original credit card would be bumped right off the ticket. And it would only show yours, and then you could refund the whole freaking thing. So, do you want me to tell you about the Soloflex scam?
Please.
Okay, well, we used to, in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we used to run per inquiry spots, which are, 1-800 buy this shit, record offer, Popio, Pocket Fisherman, whatever. And for all the TV stations that we had where we weren't actually promoting live events, we would run these spots through our syndicator, Bill Behrens, and I'm sure he remembers this story well. And, you would get like $5 every time somebody bought something. But with Soloflex, because it was such a big ticket item, you would get like $5 every time somebody ordered the videotape and information. So we got, $1,000 or $1,200 a month off of it or whatever, and he called one day to check on it because Bill handled all this for us, and they said, boy, we sure thought that because, Smoky Mountain Wrestling had actually more coverage, more stations than ECW at that time, we thought that you guys would do just as good or better as that other wrestling program. What's that? ECW. Well, how good do they do? Oh, we sent them a check for $5,000 or $6,000 last month.
Huh.
Just then I realized I got a Soloflex videotape in the mail. And I started checking around. Dennis Corluzzo got one addressed to Dick Corluzzo. Pretty soon I found out that everybody that I knew in the business that also knew Paul Lee was getting these videotapes in the mail. He was having his stooges sit down and go through their address books and calling and ordering the videotape and information for people that they knew like it was themselves, and he was getting a big payoff to finance whatever the fuck it is he was financing for ECW. So, of course, never wanted to let a good crook's idea go unpunished. I decided, well, we can do the same thing because we need some money. So I had poor Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis. I had him sit down with his address book and start making these calls. And he made 2 of them, and then on the third one, he got the same operator he got on the first one. And she said, didn't I just talk to you? And he panicked and hung up the phone. So we never did that again. But Soloflex, if you're listening, Paul Heyman owes you probably $100,000. Or I could talk about how, when I left OVW, and the thing is the WWF was punishing me because they knew I wanted to be in Louisville, and they followed me there so that they could make me miserable there, but they knew that Paul didn't want to be in Louisville. He wanted to be up there with them, so they sent him to Louisville to make him miserable. So when I left and they gave him the book, he started booking OVW and trying to do that ECW bullshit with the, Idol Stevens is having a 3-way with 2 women, and everything's a pre-tape so the people that come to the live event get to come to watch television. And one of the things he did was reverse my ruling that none of the wrestlers in the amateur class or the friends or family of any wrestlers could sit on camera, that we reserved the good seats for our real fans that came, and those people had to sit off camera if they got seats at all, because if we turned people away, those were the first people that had to stand up was friends and family. Well, he reversed this. He came out, and instead of telling the guys, look, you guys need to be here for a year or 2 to learn because it takes experience to be successful in this business, he told all the guys, if the WWF doesn't call you up in 60 days, I'm not doing my job. Then he took all the fans out of the good seats across from the camera and put them on the sides, and he put all the wrestling school students and friends and family across from the camera and told them to stand up and yell and scream and jump up and down and make noise and slap the wall, and told them what to cheer for. So it looked like his shit was getting over, when in actuality the finances of the company were tumbling. It looked like his stuff was getting over when they sent the tape up to Stephanie and them, like they could tell the difference anyway, so that it looked like his shit was successful, because now all of a sudden these people were so excited. Meanwhile, the guys weren't learning anything, because everything they did, even if they took a shit in the ring, got a huge response,